St. Louis pitches another shutout. Oakland embarrasses San Francisco, and Seattle's getting hot at the right time. It's Week 15, and this is Big Football Sundays. Welcome to Big Football Sundays. I'm Alex Sari. It's our last supplemental edition in the studio. Decided to put on the bow tie, be really nice about it. So instead of focusing a lot on Week 15, I think we're going to just kind of jump ahead and focus a lot on the playoff picture. Let's start with the AFC, and boy, are their teams slipping. Right now, the playoff picture is New England, Cincinnati, Denver, and Indianapolis as the division leaders. Now, Cincinnati's completely falling apart. Their final three games at Cleveland versus Denver at home, and then at Pittsburgh. They could easily not come away with a win anywhere there. I think Pittsburgh is the team to beat there. They go to Atlanta, they come home to play Kansas City, and then they have Cincinnati come in for the end. I think that might be your division winner right there. Denver, they've been a dominant force since Peyton Manning got there, but it's starting to look a little eeky there. They still haven't lost at home. Their running game's really come on. Their defense is spectacular. But Old Faithful Peyton Manning, he hasn't been looking the hottest. Last week was his first week without a touchdown pass in 51 games. And just his passing performances haven't been what we've come to expect. Indianapolis is another team that's started to slip. They barely won one against Brian Hoyer. Sorry, Brian, but it's the end of the road for you, sir. Cleveland, they've been in the playoff mix from the get-go, and Brian Hoyer he's falling apart. It's the beginning of the Johnny Manziel era for them, and we'll see what happens. But back to Indianapolis, a 1-point win against Cleveland is not something you're hoping for out of that team. Without Ahmad Bradshaw, they don't have much for a running game. I mean, sure, they still have Andrew Luck and all kinds of offensive weapons, but it's starting to look a little rough for them. Out of our division leaders, or to-be division winners, honestly, out of all of the teams, New England is the only one that seems to be getting hotter and hotter as the season goes on. Currently 10-3 after beating San Diego now. They have Miami coming to town, they go to New York Jets, and then they have Buffalo coming to town for the last three games. I don't see why they don't win them all. This game against Miami is going to be a really good game. I think very close, very hard fought, but New England at home is a hard beat, and that's going to be huge for the playoffs as well, I think. The wild card picture in the AFC is in a hot contention. You got Miami, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Cleveland, San Diego, and Kansas City all fighting for two spots. The way I see it coming out, though, is a combination of Baltimore at 9-7, Kansas City at 9-7, or Miami, all three of them at 9-7. Whoever owns the tiebreakers there. The way I'm looking at it, I think, is Kansas City and Miami. Now, I had both of them winning this last week against other opponents. Both teams lost, big losses for them, big implications in the playoff race. Opens the door up for teams like San Diego, especially for San Diego, against Kansas City in that division, still leading. But I don't see San Diego winning another game this year. They go to Denver, they have Denver coming to them, they go to San Francisco, and then they go to Kansas City. I don't think San Diego's going to be around. I said already, Cincinnati, not going to win another game. They're out. Pittsburgh wins the division. That leaves Baltimore and Cleveland. They could be playing, Baltimore and Cleveland can be playing for a playoff spot in that Week 17 against each other. It could be fun to watch. So in the AFC playoff picture, we got our number 1 seed New England Patriots. Still holding on to number 2 is the Denver Broncos. Number 3 seed Indianapolis. My number 4 seed is Pittsburgh. And my 5 and 6 seeds are Miami and Kansas City, respectively. Now, the way I see it shaken down, New England at home doesn't get stopped. They go straight through the Super Bowl. Denver could be a one-and-done team here. They're slipping, I think, more than most. Could depend on who they see. The way I have it matching up there is Indianapolis versus Kansas City for one of the wild card rounds, and then Pittsburgh versus Miami. Pittsburgh is another team that's hot right now. Their offense has been stellar. Roethlisberger's had a huge year, and Le'Veon Bell, slow start, heating up. That's huge for running back, especially going into the postseason. It's a lot better situation than Dallas with DeMarco Murray. We'll see there. But Pittsburgh, they could give New England a run for their money. I don't know. We'll see. Moving on to the NFC, our current division leaders are Atlanta, Green Bay, Philadelphia, and Arizona. Now with that last one, Arizona, they made a big statement this last week. They've been having some issues. Well, frankly, they hadn't scored a touchdown in a few weeks. But they had Kansas City come to town, and, well, they held them. People even might say they got a little lucky there. They held off Kansas City to win 14 to 17. Give them that 10th win, hold on to that first seed. Maybe they can hold on to it, I don't know. The NFC North could come down to the last game of the season, Green Bay versus Detroit. Detroit's still hanging in there, they're at 9-4 right now. Green Bay at 10-3. If Green Bay doesn't lose another game, it doesn't really look like they might, but if they do, before having Detroit come to town, that could be for the division. That could just be for the playoffs for either of them they could be fighting for. It's very possible Detroit can finish 11-5 and not make the playoffs. The NFC East is a fun one. Both Philadelphia and Dallas on top of that division at 9-4. Dallas winning against Chicago, and then Philadelphia losing to Seattle this last week. Now, I did have Seattle coming in and beating Philadelphia, that being their last loss of the season. I still think Philadelphia holds on, wins this division at 12-4 over Dallas at 11-5. Week 15 will be the telling tale for these two teams as Dallas goes to Philadelphia, more or less playing for this division, more or less playing for the playoffs again too, as 11-5, someone's not going to make it to the playoffs this way. Brings us to the NFC South, which I don't even think you can call it a real division anymore. Leading the league, your Atlanta Falcons at 5-8. Yeah, Atlanta 5-8, New Orleans 5-8, Carolina 4-8-1, and Tampa Bay at 2-11. That brings us to Carolina. They have Tampa Bay coming to town this week, then Cleveland next week, and then going to Atlanta in the final week. I think all they have to do is win 2 out of 3 to make the playoffs, win this division at 7-8-1. That brings us to the wild card teams. I think we're going to have 2 11-5s in here and probably some 11-5s left out. Arizona's there, Seattle's there. One of those two is going to win the division, and I think the other one's probably going to make the wild card at 11-5. You got Dallas in there, who's probably going to finish about 11-5. Detroit, 11-5 as well. Only 2 of them can make it, and I believe, well, Detroit's out of the picture now, kind of in the same situation. So they have to win, or Green Bay has to lose, and then Detroit has to beat Green Bay. Detroit's going to have to win out to find their way into the playoffs. They're not going to do it through a wild card unless someone else does it, unless someone else loses out. I think it's going to come down to them having to beat Green Bay in Green Bay, which hasn't happened in over 20 years. Detroit, sorry, bud, you're not making the playoffs. In the NFC, the road to the Super Bowl is paved through Lambeau Field. The Packers have been dominant, just absolutely dominant. Huge margins of victory, huge points scored at home. No interceptions, no losses. I don't see how this is not Green Bay's conference to lose. So your Super Bowl matchup, I think, is either going to be a Super Bowl 31 rematch or a Super Bowl 45 rematch with Green Bay and New England or Green Bay and Pittsburgh. Either way, I think it's a toss-up. If Pittsburgh gets there, they're running hot. They have huge momentum going in. New England, we already had a New England and a Green Bay matchup, and that didn't go in the favor of New England. We'll see. I think that's the real game of the year. That's all there is to talk about. Thank you for tuning in to Big Football Sunday Supplemental all season long. Good luck in the final weeks of the season. Good luck in the playoffs and the Super Bowl. Please follow me on Twitter. I'll be talking about each week in and out, probably complaining about more than a few losses as the season finishes up. Next season, Big Football Sundays will be back with another chance for you to get even. I'm Alex Ferry.